think there's this idea of this sort of social and political acceptance of Trump that we haven't seen in the past, and I think that's just been really, brought back because of his electoral college as well as popular vote win.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook. We talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by White House reporter Naomi Lim. Naomi, we're in a period of transition, out with the old and with the new. President Joe Biden, though, he gave a farewell address. What were some of the takeaways from that?
I do like that. Actually, it's like out with the old and in with the old.
But in with the old. That's true.
Just
yes. In a variety of senses of that word.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly. Biden gave his farewell address. It was sort of a 20-odd minute speech about. I thought he was going to focus more on his record and trying to defend that, because he's at this point where he's leaving his presidency with the lowest approval ratings of his entire administration.
Yes.
So I actually went in thinking that he was going to try and change people's minds. But instead he had this different message. It was sort of more of a warning message.
Right.
And he sort of likened it to a Dwight Eisenhower industrial complex, military industrial complex.
But he had a different
He had a different complex. He has another complex. And it was about sort of the tech industrial complex. He didn't name names, but it's sort of easy to figure out who he's talking about.
Rhymes with Tusk.
Rhymes with Tusk,
Rhymes
exactly,
with dusk.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the Elon Musks of the world, in terms of like the CEO of Tesla and X, and as well as, even the Mark Zuckerbergs of Meta, are really trying to curry favor with the president-elect. And basically Biden's message was, one, that they've created this oligarchy of power, wealth, influence, and in a way that is not helpful to democracy, particularly when it comes to people not wanting to participate because they feel disenchanted with the process, because why would they bother when someone like Musk, who has $1 billion, would be able to put his thumb on the scale. He also had this clarion call in terms of priorities that he didn't quite see through, but he wants people to focus on, and whether it's Trump, whether it's administrations after that, but things like concentrating on AI, which his administration in the last month has been underscoring as one of the biggest sort of challenges that we'll face. I mean, they've had 4 years to confront this, but in their last month they're talking about it. He was sort of saying, he doesn't want climate initiatives to be put on the back burner because of technological developments. He also called for ethics reform in Congress, Supreme Court reform, tax reform. So all these things that he didn't get to do, he's sort of trying to warn Trump about things that he should sort of heed. Whether Trump actually listens remains to be seen. There's also kind of speculation whether he'll leave sort of a note in the desk, similar to what I think Trump left him a note on the desk, I think.
He did, yes.
Yeah.
It's never been publicly released, but Biden has characterized it as surprisingly gracious.
Yeah, so just these two presidents who, Biden has spent so much of his 2 campaigns talking about how he's a threat to democracy, and now he's trying to embody this idea of passing the torch on to another president. So, yeah, we're sort of saying goodbye to Biden. It's been weird because it's sort of my life has revolved around this man for 6 years, and sort of getting ready for the new administration.
And as you mentioned, Biden is now bookended permanently in history by Trump. He was giving these speeches in the later part of his term where he's talking about my predecessor, and then he started referencing his successor, and it's the same guy. But one area where they didn't seem too eager to pass the torch had to do with the deal for the ceasefire and the release of some hostages from Gaza. What sort of was the dynamic there, since this kind of occurred mid-transition?
Well, so Biden, the White House, have been very sort of adamant that, while maybe Trump's election, well, actually they didn't concede that, but this idea that Trump's election kind of greased the wheels with these negotiations, what they are really reiterating is the fact that this was a proposal, a framework that Biden laid out sort of in May. I mean, the Biden White House sort of does say that, it's also been the weakening of Iran that has helped sort of also bring this deal to fruition. But this idea of how much credit that they should give Trump, because obviously Biden wants to have at least one win on foreign policy before he leaves.
Part of his legacy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then also you do have Trump, who has a personal relationship, a political relationship with the Israeli Prime Minister, and sort of is seen as not very he's a bit unpredictable on the world stage, and so that has obviously helped bring Hamas to the table as well. But it's been interesting just the way that the administration hasn't really had a similar message. So, for example, while the White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was sort of, repeating after she was getting grilled in her press briefing that, that this was Biden's deal. He's the one that brought in a lot of experience. He was the one that brought the parameters in just based on his foreign policy expertise. You had her counterpart at the State Department saying, the Trump team was critical, including his Middle East special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who is actually sort of a personal friend of Trump as well, and who has been involved in the negotiations in Qatar.
So some people will have seen the inauguration by the time they watch this, but you've written a little bit about the descent of the Florida men onto Washington as Trump is sworn in for a second time. What sort of entertainment component are we going to see there?
Well, it's more just interesting in terms of the way we haven't seen an inauguration in terms of all of the sideline programming like this. I don't think since former President Obama's second inaugural, I don't think we really got that with Trump. I mean, there were a smattering of events, but I think the storyline from Trump's first inauguration was these protests that came the day after. Right. And so I think that was sort of really took away from the celebratorial celebration aspect of it. And then obviously Biden's inauguration was hampered by COVID, and so it wasn't a traditional thing. And so it's this idea of DC coming alive, but this idea also of Florida sort of being in the spotlight as the president-elect's home state. I was speaking to the chairman of the Republican Party down there, and he said it's like one of the first times that the state party, rather than the state societies, have put on a whole slate of programming, including 2 galas the weekend before, breakfasts, obviously. But yeah, so people are really excited. There's also this idea of lots of celebrities are coming back, which again, we did not see for Trump's at least first inauguration. We also didn't see celebrities for like the White House Correspondents' Dinner as much during that time as well. Right. So someone like a lot of country music stars as well. So someone like Carrie Underwood performing at the actual swearing-in ceremony, as well as like the Village people popping up at different events throughout the weekend. And so I think there's this idea of this sort of social and political acceptance of Trump that we haven't seen in the past, and I think that's just been really brought back because of his electoral college as well as popular vote win.
It takes a village to raise a people. Thank you, Naomi. You can read Naomi and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.